Joining us is Jack Devnarain from the South African Guild of Actors. Jack, a very good morning to you. Not so good for the acting industry. We've lost yet another legend. You recently worked with McKenzie on a Nigerian movie during COVID.
Yes, that's right. And for all the years that I've known her, it was my privilege to finally get a chance to work with her and to share scenes with her. She was just effortless in her talent. And she was such an inspiration because you always had a sense of being in a playground with her whenever you're in a scene, because every moment is just a celebration of artistic and creative joy.
Yeah. I mean, when we spoke to Jet earlier on, he described her as a mother, a parent on set, one that you could rely on at any given point. How would you describe her contribution to the South African entertainment scene over the last 50 years?
Even I feel unqualified to reflect on that. She is truly a pioneer. And she was active in the industry even long before I was born. So you can imagine the privilege it feels right now to be able to reflect and to think about her contributions to the industry that spanned 50 years. You and I will never know what it must have been like in the years of struggle theatre.
No.
Literally taking on the apartheid regime that was at its peak, the most draconian, confrontational, abrasive, abusive and exploitative that we could ever imagine a government to be. And she was that voice that was prepared to stand on that stage at the risk of being arrested and kept without detention, as many performers like her were. You and I will never know that feeling of insecurity, of vulnerability, of being taken away from your family and your responsibilities. She was prepared to do that. And I don't think we can do enough to salute people who are prepared to make that kind of sacrifice.
And she continued to make sacrifices and just stand up for the rights of actors. I mean, with a recent interview she had on a podcast, she spoke about the struggles that young actresses today face with regards to some of those auditions and the vulnerabilities that they are faced with, as opposed to having landed some of these roles in the most authentic way. How important is it for actresses and actors who are of veterans and legends within the industry to continue to fight for such struggles that persist in the industry?
There are two sides to that question. The one is, of course, those are the veterans that have a responsibility to teach others about what activism means within the context of your profession. So we have to be able to learn, how do you protest? How do you challenge an unfair contract? How do you demand more, reasonably speaking, in a production? And how do you raise the question of unfair treatment, abuse, and, as you referenced earlier in your question, sexual harassment? Yeah. And as much as it is their responsibility, I believe, to teach others how to do this, there has to be a participation amongst young performers to say, I will take the baton and I will stand up for your legacy. I will protect the rights, not just for myself, not just to remember my elders, but also to protect the rights of the performers who will come after me. So there are two sides to it, and it's important we recognize both sides.
And that's very, very important. McKenzie also recently spoke about her own financial struggles at the age of 75. And with her speaking on not wanting handouts, but rather looking for work, it sort of paints a very bleak picture for people who are, I mean, in her age group of 75, still asking for work, many years having worked within the industry. How common are you finding this situation amongst veteran actors in this country?
It's common. We just don't get to hear all of those because not all of them go onto social media to make their appeals. We will find more of this taking place. It's built into the nature of the industry that we have failed to correct. We have failed to address the built-in injustice of the industry, and so we will see many more. And let's be very clear, McKenzie was prepared to ask for acting work even though we knew she shouldn't have to work. It was her dignity that said, I am prepared to work, rather than simply be a recipient of patronage or some kind of charity. She didn't want charity. She wanted to work. And I think that speaks to a lot of people in that position and we would have seen that in the social media clip that went out maybe a week ago with Glenn Gabela,
yes,
who said the same thing. And that speaks to the dignity of the artist, as opposed to, I don't know what else to do, you know, and I just want somebody to throw money at me. And that's not what these artists are asking for.
No. How much headway are we making with regards to regulations and policies and protecting the rights of actors and actresses in our country, especially when it just comes to fair pay?
Our efforts to achieve industry regulation are being distracted by politics on the one side and distracted by performers on the other who don't know what to ask for. So you have politicians, for example, you had a wonderful provision in the Copyright Amendment Bill to secure royalty rights for performers for the very first time in South African history. And you can imagine with Mam Nandi's career spanning 50 years, perhaps 30 of which would have been on film and television, she could have been earning a royalty income, a residual from the continued exploitation of her work that could have given her the money she needed for her health care rather than succumbing to her illness at 75 years old. And you had the politicians who inserted themselves into it, and even to the point where the ANC's National Executive Committee on Arts and Culture saying, we're going to tell the president not to sign the bills. When you had the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, McKenzie, himself saying he does not support the bills, knowing full well that these bills are the lifeline for actor royalties, it makes you wonder, have we been betrayed? The second reason I say is that most actors seem to think that if you appeal to the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, we will somehow find protection under labour laws. But it's not the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture that secures your work or your rights to work as an employee.
Sure.
Your protection of actors' worker rights comes from the Department of Employment and Labour. So we have to be very focused on both sides. We need to stop being played by politicians who use us for their political agendas and for their own expediency. And on the other hand, actors need to understand the territory they're working in.
And what's the reason for the department, or rather for the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, as well as the NEC Arts and Culture within the ANC, saying that they wouldn't support for actors and actresses to be getting these royalties to be paid to them?
I would love to get a clearer idea from both of them, because certainly there are lobbyists working on the other side, people that represent large studios, broadcasters, publishing houses, and for them to take an oppositional stance against not just actor royalties, but remember you also have the rights of people who are blind and who have visual impairments. Their rights are also contained in that bill, and we would love to know what kind of politician in their right mind would want to oppose the rights of people with disabilities?
Jack, when I hear you speaking, you're also placing some accountability on the actors themselves in understanding some of these regulations and knowing what they are fighting for within that fairness. And I'm not talking about intellectual capacity, but rather literacy. Do we have enough campaigns that give our actors and actresses platforms to be literate enough to know what they're engaging with?
We are hoping that the various tertiary institutions will include in their curricula some kind of industry readiness program that includes understand your contract, know the difference between an employee and a freelancer. We're not convinced that these programs are entirely effective, because you also have to account for the fact that industry cannot wait to get the next group of graduates coming through the system, because these graduates will all be enticed by the prospects of their first job on film and television. And what they don't know is that they are offering money that's far less than anyone else who came before them. Now, if you're a young actor who's trying to build a career and you're offered your first job on a major national TV series, you will jump at the opportunity regardless of what rates you're being offered. And when people don't know that they're being undercut, it only serves the producers and the broadcasters, never the talent or the crew.
Very, very sad indeed. So coming back to Mam Nandi, what would you wish for, or how would you wish for us to be able to celebrate her legacy going forward amidst all of the issues that are faced by actors and actresses in our country?
Mam Nandi was never afraid to tackle the issues. She did so, especially with the social issues in, whether it was Zone 14 or Soul City. She lived in that space where she was prepared to confront the difficult questions. We must be able to do that in her memory. She was a fighter from the very beginning, as a performer, as a professional, as a person. We must continue to remember and revere her as an iconic actress who is a matriarch in her own right. And for us to remember her, let us continue the fight.
All right, Jack, thank you so much for your time and for continuing to be that voice for actors and actresses within our country, and for also paying tribute to Mam Nandi Nyembe.